Hello everyone. Today I'd like to talk about the so-called money handbook that was published by the New Kadampa tradition, and this is published for, as they say here, New Kadampa tradition and Manjushri Kadampa Meditation Center, other Kadampa meditation centers, international retreat centers, and hotel Kadampas. So what they're saying in this handbook is that the purpose of this handbook is to serve as a guideline for the present and future managers of the New Kadampa tradition and Manjushri Kadampa Meditation Center and other Kadampa meditation centers, international retreat centers, and hotel Kadampas. So this book that was given to me by someone that I trust, and you can actually have a look at this book on our Facebook page. I uploaded it in the file section. It was published by Tharpa Publications, and it gives us a glimpse of how the NKT functions financially. I consider it a very important document and proof of what I have always thought the way they function. So my idea was always that they worked sort of as a franchising organization where they would have independent meditation centers all over the world. But the difference between a franchising situation and the NKT is that the NKT, all of the profits generated by the individual centers must be given to the NKT, to the International Temples Fund. So as I said it elsewhere, what happens in the individual centers is that the individual center will be set up usually by the funds of the individual people, the individual members, the private citizens and private individuals of the NKT. So they would be using their own funds, resources, and volunteering and whatever it takes to set up an NKT center. But then all of the management and all of the decision making and everything else would be done by the NKT. So what happens is that private individuals would put up the money, the deposit on a real estate, or they would buy a real estate, or they would sign a contract and be personally responsible for these financial issues. But then the NKT would take over. Yeah, sorry about the dogs. So then the NKT would take over and make very important decisions, whether the place can function in one way or another, or whether to close down the place, and so on. So here in this money handbook, we get a glimpse into how this system actually works. So it says here that the NKT and the KMCs, so the meditation centers, should have only 3 accounts. One, a higher interest International Temples Project savings account. 2, a lower interest with easy or instant access ITP International Temples Project savings account. And 3, a daily running account. So I'm going to stop right here. So basically they're saying everybody should only have 3 accounts, but it's actually really just 2 accounts, right? Because 2 of these 3 accounts are savings accounts for the International Temples Project. The only difference between these 2 accounts is one is a higher interest rate account. So obviously you deposit money in it and you cannot have access to it for a period of time because you get a higher interest on it. And then there is another account, which is a lower interest account, where you have easier access, but it's still all of the money in that account is going to the ITP, which is the International Temples Fund. So let's see how the small centers operate here, because they describe like Manjushri as well, and they both basically work exactly the same way. The only difference is that the amount of operational money that they are allowed to keep. So it says here that the Kadampa meditation centers should only have should have 1 or 2 ITP savings accounts. So these savings accounts that I mentioned before, and 1 daily running account. And they're not allowed to have more than these 3 accounts. Okay. Now it also says, this is important, the ITP savings accounts do not belong to the NKT or the KMCs. They are international funds dedicated to public benefit for the development of the KMCs, the Kadampa meditation centers, and temple projects throughout the world. So this means that once you deposit money into these savings accounts, you have lost sort of control over it. And then it says that the money from these ITP savings accounts shall be used for important projects and businesses, whatever that means. I'm not sure what they mean by that, because they don't specify what is an important project, what is an important business in the NKT. So what I'm particularly interested in here is the daily running account. So it says here that, okay, there will be 3 signatories of the daily running account, 3 of the following 5 people: resident teacher, AD, which is, I guess, admin director, education program coordinator, EPC, shop manager, or the WPC manager. In the smaller KMCs, the signatories should be the resident teacher, the AD, and the EPC. Obviously, as the name indicates, daily running account, the money from this account should be used for the daily running of the center. In this account, we should keep the amount of money needed up to 25,000 for the daily running of the KMC. All other money that is received from, and this is interesting, they give you all their sources here, their sources of income here. So all other money that is received from renting accommodation, facility fees, national and international festivals, Dharma celebrations, international retreats, meditation courses, and the income from DARPA publications, the shop, the WPC, that's the World Peace Cafe, and donations should be deposited into either of the 2 ITP savings accounts. So, what does this mean exactly? This means that all of the money that meditation center generates by renting out its spaces, and remember, these spaces were originally rented by the individual members that are still responsible financially for these contracts or mortgages or whatever it is that they took out to set up the center. So all of these monies coming in from all of these projects must go to the International Temples Fund. So then they describe how the money in the daily running account can be used. They say there are 2 ways of using the money in the daily running account: using it for the daily conditions that are needed for the center, shop, World Peace Cafe, DARPA publications, and 2, using it for important businesses, which include publishing DARPA's books, sadhanas, CDs, posters, cards, and so forth, and buying the stock for the shop. Okay, so they would be buying the stock from, I suppose, the central center for the shop that they would be selling, and then they would be sending the money back to the ITP. So it's an interesting system, right? So the individual center is actually buying the stock for the shops, selling the stuff obviously with a profit, and then sending the money back to the temple fund. And then it says when the daily running money is nearly finished, we can then transfer up to 25,000 pounds from the ITP savings accounts into the daily running account. This can be repeated as needed. Another interesting thing that is here is that cash in the centers can be kept up to 500 pounds, which is interesting because imagine a center where you have, people like in my center when I was involved, right? We had the resident teacher, and we had 2 monks who lived there. I think they paid rent. I'm not sure how it worked in my center. I believe that they paid some kind of rent, or they may have lived there in exchange for work, but they did work full time, both of them. And the resident teacher monk Cho was also working more than full time. He was working all the time. And so if the cash is up to £500 for these three people at any given time, like that's just really difficult for me to see how, like, how do they live? Like, what do they live on? Like, what do they eat? It's just, it seems really strange that they would limit the cash to such a low amount that is allowed to be kept by the people in the center. This also means that the centers are not allowed to save money, to put money aside for a rainy day when things, when they need some money for whatever reason, things are not going so well. For example, when the COVID hit, a lot of centers found themselves in difficulty because they didn't have any money set aside for emergencies, and they had to close down. And what happened here in Italy is that all of the centers closed down. Basically, they didn't have any money set aside for any emergencies or eventualities. So what happens is that the Sangha that has put up their own resources, their private resources and their private monies and time and volunteering and work and faith, then are just left alone because the NKT decides to move out. It's no longer profitable business to be in a particular country or place, and they just leave these people on their own, like it happened in Italy. So this is just like, I don't know, I'm thinking, where is the compassion there? Where is the justice in there? Like it just seems so sad to be in a situation like this. It's really not nice. It's really not charitable. So, like I said, you can see the whole document in our group, in the Exposing the New Kidampa group online. But what is really interesting here, I think, is this idea that all of the money generated by all of the centers, hotels, and basically everything else works like this. The hotels, the Manjushri Center, and whatever. All of the money generated goes into the temple funds. So it's clear proof that the only concern of the NKT is building temples. This is the only concern. Let's remember that these temples are only open for those people who are allowed in by the NKT, and generally it's people who pay. And I'm not going to go into why this is an issue, why this is a problem, but I do find it interesting, and I do wonder if building enormous temples all over the world is actually helping the public in any way, or helping the Buddha Dharma in any way, or what is that about? I don't know what you guys think about it. I'm thinking about it, what this means. It doesn't seem to me that this, having these temples is like such an important prerequisite for people doing Buddhism. I think, or finding Buddhism, I think it would be more fruitful to spend this enormous amount of money that flows in to all these accounts every year on something else, in a different way that is more directly beneficial for the people in one way or another. So anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments, and thank you very much for watching.